Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time, and I have a question for you. Do you believe that history repeats itself? Yes, think about that for a second. Do you believe that history repeats itself? I ask you this question because in this video, I'm going to talk to you about the history of the presidency, the history of the control over Congress, the House and the Senate, and I'll talk to you about what this has to do with the current gridlock that we face in terms of the stimulus checks and the unemployment benefit extensions. Now, I'm going to give you some information about how the presidency and the House and the Senate have the control has shifted over the past 25 years or so. It would be a mistake to think of this as just a history lesson. I think it's very important to pay attention to what I'm telling you and look at the underlying trends that I'm going to point out to you. And I think this will give you a sense of A, why we have the current gridlock now, and B, how this situation is likely to unfold. And I'll let you be the judge of that because I can't predict the future, but I do know that I can study history. And I do believe that history does tend to give us some clues about what's going to happen in the future if you pay attention to history closely. A lot of us think, hey, the past doesn't matter, the future is unpredictable. The clues to the future actually lie in the past if we know where to look and if we pay attention. So let's look at the presidents over the years. I'll go back right around 25 years. Let's start with President Bill Clinton from 1992 through 2000. President Bill Clinton was a president from 1992 through 2000. He is a Democrat. Then we have President George W. Bush from 2000 through 2008. President George W. Bush is a Republican. Then we have President Barack Obama. He's a Democrat. He was a president from 2008 through 2016, and the current president of the United States, President Donald Trump, is a Republican. Now, if you pay close attention to these trends, you'll see that we had from 1992 onwards, we had a Democrat, then we had a Republican, then we had a Democrat, and then we have a Republican. Now, the reason I say this is Warren Buffett in one of his interviews mentioned that the country essentially sways from one side to another. There's a Republican administration for some period of time, then there's a Democratic administration, then a Republican, then a Democrat. These are the words of Warren Buffett in one of his interviews. And what Warren Buffett said is this allows the country to continue moving forward. This way the country doesn't go too much in one direction or the other. I thought that was a very interesting thing. And again, these words come from Warren Buffett. I can't take credit for that line of thinking. Now, if you think about this closely, right now there's a gridlock, and the gridlock is primarily about different ideologies, different philosophies. The Democrats want, among other things, expanded unemployment benefits. They want significantly more funding for state and local governments. They want more funding for hospitals, and they want much larger stimulus checks. The Republicans tend to agree on the stimulus checks, but the Republicans don't agree on the unemployment benefit extensions, the $600 a week extensions. They don't want to provide that much money to state and local. They have other priorities. They have their set of priorities, and they want to manage the money in a different way. So again, this is a clash of ideologies, if you will, fundamental ideologies, and I would have to spend hours and hours to go into all the ideology differences between the Republicans and the Democrats, and I'm not going to do that. I believe you, my viewer, my subscriber, can come to your own decision about what makes sense for you at this moment in time. But I did want to highlight, based on what Warren Buffett said, based on looking at history, that there's been a Republican president, then a Democrat president, then a Republican, then a Democrat. And essentially the country sways from one side to another. And you can decide for yourself what you're going to be doing in November and where you feel the country is heading. But I just wanted to let you know what history was teaching us. Now, let's take a look at the House and the Senate and the control of the House and the Senate during this period since the election of President Bill Clinton all the way leading up to today. Now, on your screen, you'll see a chart that shows you the control of the House and the Senate during each president's term, each president that I alluded to earlier in this video. Now, you'll see the blue portions represent the Democrats. And if you see a darker color, this is very important to understand, that shows that that party was in control of that chamber, House or Senate. So again, if you see a darker color, that means that party had a majority. So for example, if you see that darker shade of blue, what you're looking at on your screen would indicate that the Democrats had the majority during that period in time. And if you see a darker shade of red, it would indicate that the Republicans had a majority at that moment in time, whether it was the House or the Senate. Now let's take a look at President Bill Clinton's term during 1992 through 2000 and see what happened to the control of the House and the Senate. So you can see during the initial portion of during the first 2 years of President Clinton's administration, the Democrats had control of both the House and the Senate during the first 2 years. And then you can see during the rest of President Bill Clinton's administration, it was the Republicans that had control of both the House and the Senate. Very interesting when you look at this closely and see what happened during those 8 years. Now let's jump to President George W. Bush, and you can see that President Bush had a majority with the Republicans in the House and the Senate for a majority of his term as president. So I think that was extremely fascinating as well. If you look at the underlying trends here, you'll see how the country sways from Republican to Democrat. I mean, these stats and this data will tell you a story. Now let's take a look at President Barack Obama. President Obama in the first 2 years of his administration had a majority. You can see 257 and the numbers 56. That means that Democrats had a majority at the start of the president's term, President Obama's term. Now let's take a look at the balance of power during President Trump's administration so far. So since President Trump came into the White House, you can see that in the first 2 years of President Trump's administration, the Republicans, you can see that portion in red, 52 and 241, the Republicans had complete control of the House and the Senate. They could pretty much have done anything they wanted, and they did get a lot of things done that were important to the Republican agenda. Now let's take a look at what's happened most recently during President Trump's administration, and you can see that the Democrats control the House. You see that number 235. That indicates the House. That indicates that the Democrats have a House majority, and the Republicans, where you see the number 53, the Republicans have a Senate majority. This, by the way, is what brings us to the gridlock in where things stand right now. Because the House is controlled by Democrats and because the Senate has a Republican majority, there is a complete gridlock. There's essentially a lack of consensus, and both sides are on opposite sides of the aisle, and it's going to take some negotiating. It's going to take one side giving up on something to meet in the middle. But again, the reason I wanted to show you this is when we zoom out and when we look at the bigger picture and when we look at the history of our country, you can see that essentially the balance of power. In fact, if you look at this right here, you'll see the balance of power also shifting between the House and the Senate, the balance of power shifting between Democrats and Republicans in the House versus the Senate. Now, there are important, intricate factors at play here, and there's only so much I can demonstrate. There's only so much I can teach you in a short 10 or 15 minute YouTube video. There's no chance I can cover every single aspect, every single nuance of why the House went one way, why the Senate went the other way, and what the presidents got done during their administration with the House majority versus the Senate minority and vice versa. My goal was to show you how the balance of power shifts over time and how it has shifted over the past 25 to 30 years within the US system of government. Now, as far as unemployment benefits and stimulus checks go, I did cover that at the start of the video. There is a fundamental difference in ideologies between both sides. The Republicans want things to be done a certain way. The Democrats want things to be done a certain way. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is this: if a president wins the election and if his party has control over the House and the Senate, his or her agenda is going to get pushed through because essentially there's no barrier to them. That's one of the reasons the Affordable Care Act was passed without too much support from the other side of the aisle. And there are many instances like this across the history of our country. Now, if on the other hand, a president does get elected, but he has the House, which is controlled by the opposing party, which by the way is what's happened in this case. We have President Trump, who's a Republican, and we have the House, which is controlled by Democrats. You then get this inevitable gridlock. What is unfortunate about this situation is that A, we are in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, and B, we are in an election year. We are a few weeks away from what is probably going to be the most consequential election in modern times in the history of the United States. And I think this election will have ripple effects all over the world. So that's it, everybody. I hope you learned something new. I believe this was more than just a history lesson, because I think this can give us an indication of potentially where our country could be going. It's up to you to interpret this information any way you want. My goal was to give you an analysis of what's happened over the years. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time. If you learned something new from this hopefully entertaining and not boring history lesson, please do me a favor. You'll help the history of my channel if you just take a minute of your time, a second of your time, and then click the like button. In terms of your history, it'll take you a second, but it'll matter to my history and my team's history if you take a minute, a second of your time, and if you simply click the like button. Please also subscribe and please enable notifications so you get instant updates from us going forward. We release videos at 2 p.m. East Coast time most days of the week. If you want to get added to our breaking news and our text message alerts list, please get your cell phone out, send a text message with the word ignition or time 270,000. That's 70000. And then you'll get added to our breaking news and alerts list. You can also get emails from us, and you can opt out at any time. So I really, really appreciate you watching. Let me know what you think of these this sort of historical seesaw, if you want to call it that, and let me know if you learned anything new from this video, and if you had any aha moments. Please comment below. I do read most of the comments because I enjoy engaging with and interacting with our community. I really appreciate you watching. I'll see you in the next video at Ignition Time. Thanks. Take care.